Charlatan. New film directed by Agnieszka Holland is out in theaters now. This time around, it's a co-production between the Czech Republic, Poland, and the USA, and the film is in Czech. It tells the story of a real-life person, Jan Mikolášek, a famed alternative medicine doctor that practiced in Czechoslovakia around mid-20th century, although he himself objected to the term, to being called doctor, to using that term to describe him. He was an expert on natural herbs as well as diagnosing patients based on urine samples. Apparently, over the course of his career, he healed hundreds of thousands of people and was mostly correct in his weird methods of approaching medicine, as unbelievable as it may sound. The film's story takes place in two timelines. The main one is taking place in the late 1950s, when the communist government finally has enough and accuses him of on fabricated charges of murder and puts him in jail and then on trial. And the second timeline are the flashbacks that Jan then goes through that show his youth, his wartime past, his how he learned his craft, his complicated personal affairs, and finally his dealings with another authoritarian regime, the Nazi Germany occupants during the Second World War. So it's this mix of a period piece and a character study. On the one hand, it paints the picture of Czechoslovakia through a longer period of turbulent times, from one war to another and then the communist rule. On the other, it's this portrait of a layered and complicated individual, this larger-than-life person who grew to be almost a legend, yet by some was considered a fraud and a hack. And this, to me, this aspect of the story was the meat of the film, this exploration of a character. I think it's executed really well, and that's thanks to both the script and the incredible work done by Ivan Trojan, who plays the lead role. His performance helps create this person that you can make an argument is a hero of the people who does good things for society as a whole, a selfless, driven, committed man. But then as we peer into the personal life, that selflessness is put to question, as we learn that he's actually fairly arrogant and demanding and emotionally selfish to the point that it almost makes him a monster at some points. Put it like this: if you took out individual scenes from the movie and showed them to someone, depending on the scene, they would tell you that this character is unquestionably a hero protagonist or a straight up villain. Yet this is a single person. I think the balancing act on that was very difficult, but it works in the film. And even a day later, I'm still conflicted. I'm still on the fence as to what to think about Mikolášek as he was presented to me, how to judge him. I did already mention Ivan Trojan, but there's also another actor that plays the young Mikolášek. And as I was watching the film, I was amazed by how remarkably on point the casting was, because he really did look like the younger version of the other actor. And then the credits rolled, and it turned out it's actually Josef Trojan, who was the son of the older actor. So that's why the resemblance is so uncanny. Three other things I have to mention. One, I absolutely loved the sound design of the film. The sounds of nature, rain, forests, wind going through brushes, but also the sounds of the interiors. The clicking of the typewriter, the sound of the record player, even small stuff like clicking of cutlery or closing the door. Somehow the sound was always on the forefront and always on point. I felt like I was there in the film purely because of it. It's rare that you notice this stuff as much as I did in this film, which is why I think it deserves pointing out. Two, I liked what Holland did with the color palette to differentiate between the two timelines visually. It's much the same that Greta Gerwig did earlier this year with Little Women. The past is full of color, warmth, life, whereas the present day events are grey and washed out, which makes perfect sense given what happens in the story, and is also a seamless way to let the audience know where we are chronologically speaking at any given moment. And finally, three, there are a couple of scenes in here that are very brutal and not for the faint of heart. Physical violence between people is one thing, but also, unfortunately, animal cruelty. There's one terrifying, awful scene of that, which made me wince, and I can see it making a lot of people very uncomfortable. So just a fair warning. All in all, Charlatan ends up being a pretty interesting beast, because on paper, it's not a particularly riveting story or something that would maybe grab my attention on first glance, but I'm glad I saw it, because it's really a well put together film, competent on every level, from the technical aspects through performances to just the pure storytelling. and it also has that great moral ambiguity in terms of the character that it presents. It is worth watching, to be sure.